So my name's Chris Yost. I am the robotics teacher from Cochranton Highschool. I'm going to be talking about our robotics program a little bit. When I first started, it was basic woodworking projects that maybe I still did when I was in high school 13, 14 years ago. So I looked at the program like, okay, well, I know that I wanted to change it into something more modern. So my big thing was I looked at the needs of the economy locally a little bit. I looked at what our biggest kind of like boom is locally, which is manufacturing and tool and die. I spent a lot of time talking to local industry leaders, local manufacturers, people who work in the industry, getting an idea of exactly, what they want in an employee per se. So with the RoboBots program, which was just kind of getting its spark, that program was developed to bridge the gap between manufacturing and school. So whenever the competitions first came about, such as RoboBots, all the schools locally jumped on board. So I came right into it, not really having any experience per se in manufacturing. So we jumped into our first year, not really knowing what to expect, what to do, and we epically failed at what we went into it. I think the first year I had 5 students. We did it as an after-school program, and I think we took like 17th place or something like that. So it was still like, okay, now I know what we need to do. I know, how this whole program works. So we started to look at the program. Me and my administration is, how can we develop a class around this, but also keep it to where we're providing those direct skills that the kids need. So I developed a class called Robotics Engineering 1, and that took off right off the bat. I mean, I had a full class of, I think, 18 kids maybe within the first 2 years that class started. And right after the class started, we started doing better within the competitions because we had the means to do so. Our first big, I guess you could say, win was our local competition regionally here that we had at Meadville High School. I believe that was back in 2012. I had a group of 5 or 6 students within that group, and we had won the competition locally, and then we were given the opportunity to go to the national competition. Really didn't even know it existed at that point necessarily. So when we got to the national competition, that's when it was kind of like, okay, now we're in a whole different realm of what we have to experience. So we competed against teams from Puerto Rico, Florida, Iowa, California, and a lot of these schools have the same quality students that I have, but they have access to maybe better equipment, or maybe they are having a shop outsource and get their parts made for them. So we looked at it from now as a whole different retrospect, a whole different level. So knowing that now, we came back, competed regionally for another 2 or 3 years, and in 2016 we went back to nationals after we had won our regional competitions. I think at that point it was 4 years in a row. So when we went back to nationals that year, I had 3 separate teams with me that year, and I think I had a total of like 28 kids. It was the most kids I've ever had. We got to Cal U, where actually I went to college at, so it was kind of like a little bit of a cool thing to do. You go back to your college to compete with the kids now you're teaching. So we get back to Cal U, and we competed that year, and a lot of the kids didn't realize that when you go to the national competition that colleges are also allowed to compete. So we were up against schools that were technical colleges that were they had adults on their teams that were 35, 40 years old that were mechanical engineers. They started seeing schools like Carnegie Mellon University, and it's like, oh, so we're competing against people that have IQs of 160, they have an engineering degree already. So they were really intimidated by that. And I simply just told them, I said, you guys want to stand around and whine about it, or you just want to go and win? So that year they stepped up, and we were rolling through the competition pretty easily at some point, but just like any bracketed competition, you start to get down towards the end, and it starts to get extremely difficult, being that the competition rules state that you may get an hour in between a match, but it may be 20 minutes. So it's kind of like a NASCAR pit crew whenever the kids are done, in a match. So we got up against the previous national champions from the year before that, Plum High School out of Pittsburgh, and I had done my research on all of these teams that have been winning national competitions, and we've been looking at their designs also, how we could make and innovate ideas too. So my students got into the arena and the ring at that point thinking, we just got to go in there and just just nonstop. So they went into that match and completely demolished them. And that was that moment where it was like, we got a chance. I think during that match, it was a full 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I think, somewhere around there. But during that match, our designer robot never lifted off the ground because we never got hit whatsoever. So at that point, I think they realized we got a chance. And here we are up against Carnegie Mellon University in the finals match. They had one loss and we had no losses. We had gone through the competition undefeated. So the first match we get in there and it's head-to-head, octagonal arena, and it seemed like they went through the bracket just as easily as we did. I think they lost the match just by getting hung up on the wall or something. So we got into that match kind of a little bit nauseous and a little bit scared, and the kids, they had a little bit of anxiety, but we went into that first match and I think we lost the match within the first 30 seconds. So they were really distraught at that point. But the way the competition works is they get 20 minutes minimum in between a match to get batteries charged, get the bot, fully functional if needs be. So we got back to the pit table and there were just pieces bent, twisted, torn from the 3 or 4 impacts that they put on us. But at that point, all 28 kids, instead of just standing around watching from my school, everybody's pitching in and taking parts out of the bot, trying to bend them straight and bang them straight and getting batteries charged for everybody. And it was nice to see the camaraderie, not just between those 5 or 6 students, but the 28 kids that everybody pitched in, with the help. So they actually got everything together, got it all functional and working again. We went back into that match knowing that what just happened to us was a little bit of a fluke, but at the same time, Colton Boozer, who was the driver, knew I need to do something different now. So the second match, which was only 20 minutes later, we got back into the arena and we danced around for about 20 or 30 seconds, and Colton put a hit on him front to front and face to face and flipped him completely upside down vertical. And then they were driving around upside down, and Colton, for some reason, it was just like the pitch perfect moment. He turned and full throttle, and we hit them head to head in the middle of the arena, and I think we threw them A to B to A back and forth. During that period, whenever he hit them, we must have been a piece on the bottom of their bot, and when they landed right side up. So at that point, their wheels were immobile, and the rules state that if you have an immobile design and you can't show any movement, the match is over. And at that point, it was like, you could see everybody's looks on their faces. It was just like, okay, we did it. We did it. And it was awesome.